This region is composed of sort of two general types, rich countries and quite poor countries. And it's often assumed that private finance into PPP-style projects is only for poor. It provides the finance, both the equity finance and the debt. But the real value is that it's involving the private sector in risk, competent people, and therefore projects are being built within cost, on time, and to the highest specification, because private equity investors like us and banks who support the projects as well with debt want to see that things really work. So it brings up the standards as well. The types of projects for this region, there's a long and very successful history of power projects, water desalination projects and combined water and energy generation projects. There's been less of other things, transport infrastructure, there have been some, and I suspect that in the future there'll be a lot more. It's a very interesting question, and I think it's got very complex and involved directions in which it can go. Most logically, with governments, even those rich governments with less money because their revenues are depleted because a lot of them come from hydrocarbons, there's a strong argument that there'll be more requirement for private equity and more PPP style IPPs, power projects, transport projects, social accommodation projects. So that's the simple direction. The reality, I suspect, is going to be more complex. There will be, in some areas, governments that very much stick to their programs, that have macroeconomic policies that have learned that you continue to invest and to develop. You don't sort of suddenly cut things off or so on. But equally, there will be governments who lose confidence and are worried about the loss of revenues and therefore curtail a number of projects in the region. So I think it'll be more mixed. And you can look particularly, say, at renewables, of which we all have a lot of enthusiasm, alternative energy. And maybe the impulse to do those speedily will be less, because now the subsidies and the costs, the operating costs of running thermal power projects are going to be less as well. So there'll be complexity in the outcomes as a consequence of reduced oil price, not a single direction for things. I think it is. It has an enormous contribution to make, but which is particularly providing liquidity. You have developers, you have host country investors as well, who like to put a certain amount of money in, but their capacity is infinite. Their desire and ability to commit equity to projects is finite, I should say, rather than infinite. And so you enable them to do more projects, to use their technical skills and their local knowledge skills to support more projects. If people like us, like our fund, our equity fund, are investing alongside them. Equally, for projects that already exist, where they've been completed and they're operating, we can replace money that's come in from developers and industry operators by buying from them and so on. That hasn't been much resorted to. It's only in power and water desalination where we've seen a significant number of projects. I suspect, partly for reasons I've said before, partly because there'll be less revenues for government budgets, government coffers, that there will be more and more, and people will see that as an advantage, as well as the risk sharing and therefore the efficiency of having a private equity partner in as well. I think it's a very positive future for the next 3 to 5 years from private equity. I think it's at a very good time. It really is at a sort of take-off time for the kind of things that private infrastructure, private companies have been doing for the region. The region's had great success to date, but we're in an uncertain world. We're in a world where we can see slow growth, if any growth, as a global average. Some of the region has big challenges. Egypt has big challenges, but quite positive opportunities as well. And I think the conference has provided a fulcrum, a forum, and a focus for that. And I think it's been extremely well attended. And the presentations that I've taken part in, I've seen and listened to, have been excellent. I was almost at the point of saying that particularly the one I've taken part in was very, very good indeed. And I didn't mean to say that.